So many of you have been asking for my updated rogue endgame build, and I'm working on it still. In this video description, I'll have a link to the D4 builds of what I have put together so far. You can see I'm level 70, so it'll probably be reflective of around level 70, but I'll be finishing it up completely over the course of today as I level up, as well as I continue to test out things and change things. But I'm pretty settled on kind of what I want to go for in this season, and it's not really going to change much, I don't think. And that is mainly because, well, I wanted to test out the hearts significantly, and I wanted to really dive into how the changes felt towards leveling before I actually gave you all a build. It doesn't really make sense to me to give you an end game build before the season comes out when I haven't even actually experienced what the hearts feel like the new season feels like, the new leveling additions with the seasonal journey feel like, before I've tested it, right? Like I gotta test it, right? But with that said, this build has been absolutely crushing it for me in World Tier 4, and I want to just show you all what I got so far. And we're gonna start off with the skills here, because obviously everything comes down to what skills you're running. Now, it is a Twisting Blades build, so if that's not your thing, I mean, you guys can leave already. Okay, move on. See you later. Bye-bye. But if you like Twisting Blades, or you just want to feel strong for Season 1 here, this is definitely the way to go, in my opinion. Now, we're starting off with Puncture, with Fundamental Puncture. That's going to be our guaranteed vulnerable source. It's going to be pretty important for us to have that in every build. Moving on to Twisting Blades. We're running Twisting Blades, Advanced Twisting Blades to reduce cooldowns. I find this to be very, very important, more so than the improved Twisting Blades, because we actually have an aspect that can basically constantly daze them. So we do not need this. This is just useless. And then we're going to be picking up Sturdy and Siphoning Strikes. Now, you might notice I only have 2 points in Siphoning Strikes, or you might be surprised that I have 2 points at all in Siphoning Strikes. I don't like Siphoning Strikes nearly as much as I did before. There really is a lack of sustain, and sustain is going to be a very, very important thing to build into basically every build in the game, and Siphoning Strikes is one of the few ways that we can actually get it. Siphoning Strikes is absolutely god-awful in the early game, and in fact, I've only found it to be really good once I actually put the build together and I got into World Tier 4. That's when I'm like, okay, Siphoning Strikes is actually doing something now. And that's partially because, oh, you need a crit, but also partially because you need other things to increase potentially your lucky hit chance. You need to have very high crit strike chance. You need to constantly be close to enemies, because keep in mind that this is a lucky hit proc now, not just critical strike. Okay, before it was just critical strikes gives you the heal. Now you need a lucky hit, and you can see on Twisting Blades is a 35% chance. So if I hit with the Twisting Blades, that's 35. And then when I pull it out, it's 35% again. And then when it spins around me, that's another 35%. Which means essentially I get 1 proc of Siphoning Strikes per Twisting Blades hit on one enemy, but oftentimes it hits multiple, like 6 or 7 enemies at a time. So I get oftentimes like 2-3 procs potentially over the course of using this. But also there's a lot of other things that apply it. And so oftentimes this actually gives me a good amount of sustain. But Shadow Step, we're not running Dash. Dash, what I found here in Season 1 is that your survivability is so low that I'd much just rather focus on getting the build set up and having other options to really fill in the damage and survivability, more so than just speeding through everything. Because you can speed it through everything, and Dash might be really good as you start to approach higher level and get the build set up. But I found Dash to be a very big detriment when I want to pull together a couple other things with this build. Shadow Step, though, very, very important because it's a CC break and gives you a little bit more mobility as well. Weapon Mastery just for more damage. This is going to be our key, though. We have Concussive, Trick Attacks, and Rapid Gambits. This is a key setup for any build that is able to knock back or knock down, because you get extra crit strike chance, and then when you critically strike a dazed enemy, they're knocked down, and then whenever you go ahead and daze an enemy, you also reduce your evade cooldown. This basically means that our evade's on like a 2-second cooldown. This also means that we are able to perma CC people, and I'll show you all that later on. Poison Trap with the enhanced Poison Trap for the ability to knock down people. Exploit of Malice for extra damage. And then we're going to be running into Poison Imbuement. Now this might be a little bit surprising to you all, because we're running a Trapper build, but we're also introducing Poison Imbuement to the build. And this is very, very big in terms of an addition towards this build. I've not run Poison Immune with my Trapper build because it wasn't really necessary, right? I didn't need the damage, but also I didn't really need to do that because, well, I had much higher cooldown reduction with my traps. I had much survivability, much more survivability, etc. But the thing that poison immune actually allows me to do is A, pump out way more damage, but also B, consistently apply the debilitating toxins everywhere I go. Poison trap can do it, right? It gives a pretty big AoE radius, and you'll see later that, well, I'm actually able to apply poison traps quite frequently. But poison imbuement just guarantees it. And this damage reduction is incredibly important. Not only that, but you also could find it in stats on your gear, and it's actually really nice to have as well. Then we're going to be picking up precision imbuement, which is really nice with the build as well, because it's going to give us even more crit strike chance for us to go ahead and CC them permanently. This also helps us out a lot. And then we're actually going to be picking up frigid finesse. Now this only works with our luxury items, which I'll go over in a bit, but a massive addition to chilled enemies. This is really nice. Then we have death trap. Pretty self-explanatory. When we're running a trapper build, we pull everyone in and we basically are able to perma CC them. Really nice. Trap mastery increases our crit strike chance against vulnerable enemies and crowd control enemies, which we're basically going to have permanently up. Aftermath for a little energy regeneration with our death trap, and then innervation for a little bit of extra chance to gain energy. And I also, you can see I only have 57 points. I have one additional point. I'm going to be going ahead and putting this in Alchemist Fortune to give us extra lucky hit chance with our death trap, our poison imbuement, and our poison trap here. Those are all not physical damage, right? This is a trap, which does shadow damage. And then you can see here, this is poison damage and poison damage, right? So all of that is non-physical, whereas like Twisting Blades is physical, which means that things like Death Trap can actually apply siphoning strikes whenever you go ahead and critically strike, which is pretty important, okay? And then lastly, our key passive is going to be Exposure. And this is actually pretty important for two reasons. One, we want to reduce our trap cooldowns, but also we're going to be going ahead and dropping stun grenades. Now this is a very important synergy when we dive into our build here. So with the build, we have a few luxury aspects. I don't have all of them on right now because I'm actually poor and I've been trying out a couple different things, but in the D4 builds, I will have the aspects that I recommend. But there's a few things that I want to highlight. Obviously, Blade Dancer is going to be super important, but also Blast Trappers. This is going to give us guaranteed vulnerable basically across everyone whenever we deal direct damage with our trap skills. We're also going to be running the Vengeful aspect here, giving us extra, making enemies vulnerable, extra crit chance. This is going to be super important to synergize with our skills. Our Disobedience aspect is going to be on our amulet for increased survivability. Again, survivability is key, so be sure to kind of focus on that. And here's where it gets really exciting, is these three over here. Our trap, dealing direct damage to vulnerable enemies, which typically has to do with our traps, has a chance to daze them for 2 seconds. Well, guess what? Whenever we daze, we knock down. Whenever we knock down, we get critically strike bonuses. Okay, this is huge because this basically allows us to have perma CC. Now, this is consistent with our previous builds and such, but also I've combined Frostbitten with Penitent Greaves. Now, what you'll notice is Penitent Greaves leaves that trail of chill or trail of frost, and we get extra damage to chilled enemies. This is really nice, but it also gives us crowd control duration in the base stats, which we actually want already, and movement speed. The stats aren't always the greatest with these boots or unique items, but these ones are serviceable. The passive is what we really want, because with that passive, whenever we chill enemies and we hit them with our grenade skills, we have a chance to equal to our double critical strike chance to be instantly frozen, and we deal increased critical strike damage against frozen enemies. You might be like, but wait, we haven't talked about any grenade skills. Well, there's one here that you might have missed. And I know I potentially have missed this in the past. But when we lucky hit, we have a 25% chance whenever dealing damage to an enemy affected by a trap skill to either reduce the cooldowns or drop a cluster of stun grenades. Which means when we drop that cluster of stun grenades, which will actually happen, we're going to be instantly freezing them most often because, well, we have to lucky hit and we have to make sure our critical strike chance is high, but it will be high, oftentimes like 70%, which guess what? We're going to be instantly frozen. So this typically is 100% chance, and then we just have to rely on getting that lucky hit and then dropping the grenades. And since we go ahead and chill them with our Penitent Greaves, we're going to be freezing them every time. This is really nice, okay? So we're going to get the extra critical strike damage, and also we're CCing them because, again, in Season 1, survivability is the key here, okay? It's the key to everything. We really want to survive, and being able to perma CC people is extremely, extremely good. And guess what? With that chill or frozen enemies, we're getting 40% extra damage with our frigid finesse here because it's frozen. Oftentimes 20%, but sometimes 40%. That is a huge, huge addition. Very, very solid. And lastly, my last aspect that I have on my chest piece is going to be that aspect of might. There's a couple I'm missing, right? Like I love edge masters. I'd love to potentially run, I don't know, maybe like a basic attack damage increase or basic attack speed increasing, or potentially another utility aspect like the aspect of Umbral to have infinite energy whenever we CC people. But I don't have the resources to do that yet. With that said, though, that's kind of the setup right now. I'll briefly go over the Paragon and just really kind of talk about some of the things that I'm kind of working towards in terms of glyphs and legendary nodes. Again, I'll have kind of a breakdown of what I got so far in the D4 builds down below. But you'll notice my 3 glyphs. We have Closer, we have Diminish, and we have Turf. Closer here, 10% damage reduction. Really nice. Just overall, an amazing, amazing option to get a little bit extra damage reduction. Then we have the Diminish here. This is super important for 10% reduced physical damage from vulnerable enemies because we're constantly vulnerabling them. It's going to be basically 10% reduced physical damage. And then 10% damage reduction against close enemies. Pretty straightforward. We just want damage reduction. But the Deadly Ambush node here is going to be a pretty core one, getting extra critical strike damage against enemies affected by trap skills. You can see how many critical strike damage increasing things we have. And then we're going to be going for Tricks of the Trade next. Whenever we hit a basic skill or cutthroat skill is going to be doing 25% extra damage. And whenever we go ahead and use our Twisting Blades, our basic is doing 25% extra damage. Really, we go Puncture into Twisting Blades. That's going to be 25% increased damage. And since we're running combo points, we are going to get that basically every time. Okay, super, super nice node. Other than that, we're just kind of going into anything that's going to give us extra cooldown reduction or potentially damage reduction rather. So which is why something like Cunning here is so, so nice. Extra damage reduction from enemies affected by trap skills. Perfect. Extra armor here. Okay, perfect. Extra armor here. Perfect. Armor here. Perfect. Anything that's going to give us armor, anything that's going to give us survivability is so, so important in Season 1. More so than Season 0. Okay, Season 0, yes, survivability was still important, especially when you wanted to push. But you could actually get through World Tier 4 faster if you just went full damage oftentimes, with just a little bit of damage reduction sprinkled in. In Season 1, it's very hard to push into World Tier 4 without damage reduction. And that's why we're going to go hard on it. With that said, though, I actually want to showcase the build for you all here and kind of show what actually we're doing with this. So a couple things with this build and how it really plays out. You want a basic, oftentimes we are running combo points in order for us to kind of get extra damage with our Twisting Blades, but also to apply vulnerable to our targets that might be like elites to start dealing damage to them. Although usually on an AoE, we're going to get consistently Death Trap and Poison Trap to apply vulnerable to everyone. We also want to cycle in our Poison Imbuement in order for us to get massive damage to those elites and let our traps typically and our AoE damage from Twisting Blades finish off the groups of trash. We also want to group up quite a few enemies in order for us to get the cooldown reduction and the lucky hit procs from that exposure passive and potentially freeze them. And you can even see our Penitent Greaves kind of going off here, which is pretty cool. We're on a tier 29 here, which is, you know, pretty tricky. You can see here I do take damage, but you can see here once we get our traps going, we instantly freeze everyone. Now we do have the Explodey passive right now with this Nightmare Dungeon, but check out how consistently we're able to freeze the entire group. Look at that. They're all frozen right now. It is absolutely amazing with the Penitent Greaves because we consistently get the freeze off on them whenever we go in. And you can see there, that was like a gigantic group of enemies with multiple elites, and we were able to just clear through them while kind of just chatting. It wasn't really difficult at all. And this is a tier 29, keep in mind, at level 71. You know, I'm really not struggling at all. You do take quite a bit of damage here, but because of my massive survivability, oftentimes any of the lesser creatures, like any of the common mobs, don't really do much damage to me. And in fact, the only reason I am taking a damage is because of that Death Pulse passive right here, where I can't just sit in the enemies and absolutely blast because, well, they're going to explode and kill me. Here's another example here. We got a couple of elites here, and we're going to go ahead and sit there and check out the damage we're doing. I mean, this granted, we have the Artillery Shrine, but we actually do a massive amount of damage. You can see there, I almost got one shot by that stupid Death Explosion passive. But we do massive damage, even despite kind of fully speccing into damage reduction. And that's a key thing with the rogue, is that your damage is very, very high, even without going through and doing all these things to get damage. That's really nice. And so you could fully spec into damage reduction and not really have too much of an issue. Again, you can see constantly that we're able to freeze these enemies simply due to the fact that we have that Penitent Greaves active, constantly chilling the enemies. And that is one addition that I found to be really excellent. That Penitent Greaves really changes the game in terms of how much CC you're able to pump out. Before, you're able to consistently knock them down and do amazing things like that, but that requires you to constantly hit them. And if you ever had to like leave or step out of the circle that you're hitting them with, well, they could potentially go ahead and hit back, which could be a little tricky. Okay, with the frozen, you could see that I could walk away and not really worry too much about going ahead and having to deal with them be un-CC'd or lose their CC bar, which is really, really nice. And look at that little treasure goblin here, a little reward for us. And you can see we're actually quite mobile with this build, simply for the fact that we do have that shadow step and the additional movement speed from Penitent Greaves and the combo points kind of comboing off with our Twisting Blades. Because Twisting Blades with the combo points addition, we also get a burst of movement speed when we do use it. We don't necessarily need to go for 3 combo points to apply it, but we do use combo points because inner sight is not necessary. I've never had a problem with energy, and once you get the ring of the umbral or the aspect of the umbral, which is actually a codex aspect in the champion's demise, then you actually can go ahead and have permanent energy uptime, which is really, really nice. And again, I'll showcase this completely in a future update with the completed version, where I can actually show you all, perhaps when I reach like level 80 or so that I can actually show you exactly what this build is truly capable of at the higher end. But this is really, really good so far, and I've absolutely been crushing it so far on the rogue. Again, a tier 29 at a level 71 was already doable, you know, with the season 0, but with season 1 it's been a lot harder because we basically got like a 20% nerf on our power. So being able to do a tier 29 at level 71 has been very, very impressive to me, and I've been really, really happy with kind of the performance on this. And you can see here I haven't even died, but that's pretty much the breakdown of the build and kind of what I've been going for so far. I know this wasn't absolutely perfect because, well, I don't have the full build online yet, and hopefully I'll be able to showcase that to you soon. But until then, hopefully this will help you all as you journey into World Tier 3 and World Tier 4. The key aspects I'll note before ending this video, in order for this to kind of really function, you're going to want the Blade Dancers one. That's going to be very, very crucial. And you're going to want the Blast Trappers. That's going to be pretty important. Where did I put it? Blast Trappers. And the last one you're going to want is actually the Frostbitten plus Penitent Greaves, if you can find it. If you can't, then just go for the Manglers, which again, you have to find it, and the obviously damage reduction one, the Aspect of Might. So Blast Trappers, Manglers, Blade Dancers, or if you can, Penitent Greaves plus Frostbitten. That's going to be really nice as well. Obviously, all of them are going to be important as you develop your build, but those are going to be the key ones that I want to pay attention to. So hopefully this was helpful. If it was, leave a like on the video, guys. Thanks for watching, and a full update on the rogue meta soon. See you then. Just kidding, a little bonus clip here. We actually ran into the butcher as we were completing the dungeon. I'll just show you the amount of amazing survivability this build has, along with its damage. So check this out. We can literally just face tank the butcher here and not really worry about anything that the butcher has to do. And our big damage, again, comes from that poison imbuement plus our twisting blades, which is a really nice addition to the trapper build and allows you to really pump out some serious damage against those single targets, which is why we're adding poison imbuement to the build. So tier 29, butcher down, pretty easy. Bonus clip. See you for the next one.